Feminine radiance and masculine void on today's Oblyron spirituality. Greetings everyone, I'm Oblyron, Lord of the Underworld, and consort to the most lovely Hecate. Today we are going to talk about radiance and void, their links to the light and shadow, and feminine and masculine energies. We've all heard of the saying, as above, so below, as within, so without. But what if I were to tell you ways in which we behave as men and women here on Earth, which actually mirrors much of what's happening in the cosmos, much of the dynamics and the interplays of energies between the celestial bodies also mimic our own psychology? The revelation came to me a few years back when I learned how the ancient Egyptians worshipped the sun as a feminine object, and it always puzzled me. I could never quite figure it out, because in so much of our culture, across various cultures actually, we are all taught to believe that the sun is a masculine object. You know, it's active, it's the daytime, it's this very productive and, again, masculine energy. But the ancient Egyptians had a completely different perspective on it. And I always wondered to myself, well, if the sun is the feminine object, then what is the masculine object? It's definitely not Earth, because there are so many ways in which we equate Earth to also being feminine. So there has to be something else. And that's when it occurred to me. The masculine object in our nearest vicinity is the black hole at the center of our galaxy. And once I made that revelation, it's like everything just kind of clicked into place. By viewing the sun as a feminine object, it makes a lot of sense, because essentially the sun radiates life. The sun gives life by radiating life. If the sun weren't there, everything on this planet would die. The plants, the people, animals, every single thing would be gone. So the fact that it's there and it is a life bringer is very much in line with how we would view feminine objects. Women give birth. They essentially radiate new life. And this is in stark contrast with a black hole. A black hole is the void at the center of our galaxy. And just like masculine consciousness, it is a destroyer. It is an attractor. And many of the things that we equate with masculinity also happens to coincide with black holes. So yes, on the most very basic levels, women create life and men take life. And all it takes is a look at our entire human history to see that that is actually pretty true. You know, it's we as men who go to war. It's we as men who essentially create weapons of war. We're the ones who create the technology, and ultimately much of the technology that we create has a tendency to kind of destroy us, or it pollutes the earth or whatnot. And so many of these attitudes that men have also coincide with the black hole. A black hole swallows the stars. A black hole is the cosmic destroyer. It just grows and it just gets bigger. And it's not that it is evil or wrong. It just serves a purpose. Even in terms of human relationships, the relationships between stars and black holes is also strikingly similar. For example, we know that the black hole essentially provides the structure and the support to the entire galaxy. Now, that's very similar in human relationships when many women say that they want a man to lead. When men stop leading, that's when relationships begin to fall apart. And if the black hole at the center of this galaxy was not holding everything together, essentially, all the stars would just fly off into space. In fact, the stars would have never formed in the first place because all the matter would have just kept on expanding, and there would be nothing to give it support and structure. There would be nothing to even condense the stars down into some type of shape in which planets and stars and civilization could ultimately form. I think it's also interesting how we have certain phrases and sayings which also mimic the relationship between stars and black holes as between women and men. For example, the age-old saying is, women want a man who's tall, dark, and handsome. Well, what is the dark? It's essentially that black hole energy. It's essentially that void energy. If a man is too radiant, if he's too much like the light, he becomes too feminized, and thus he cannot provide that structure and support. He becomes the nice guy who ultimately loses himself in the relationship. It's also interesting to note that these dynamics also play out in the natural world. So let's say with lions, you generally have one male lion to a harem of female lions. Even in human societies, we have seen this dynamic in various cultures across the world, where one man of, let's say, wealth and status will have access to a variety of women. And in the modern dating scene, we're even starting to see these types of dynamics pop up. I think it's also interesting to note the different psychic abilities that women and men possess and how it relates to the relationships between stars and black holes. Feminine subjects are also associated with heart-centered subjects like compassion, love, and empathy. And it is because of those that women have a tendency to inherit the psychic abilities that have to deal with the senses. So clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairtangence, clairgustance, clairalience. And women typically inherit these psychic abilities because it is in their nature to be observant to the world around them. Men have a tendency to inherit one psychic ability, and that is clairsentience, because of the logic and mind-oriented nature of men. This is also similar to the relationship between stars and black holes, because stars have a tendency to radiate outward. They have a tendency to expand into the space around them. The light that they send out is essentially information which bounces onto the planets and ultimately onto the animals and people and civilizations that happen to be inhabiting those planets. The black hole, on the other hand, at the center of the galaxy, tends to absorb all that information. It tends to collect the information when those stars and those civilizations ultimately get sucked up in them. Now, right now, we live in a world that is seemingly out of balance. We are living in a world where essentially women are forced to be in their masculine and men have become more feminized. But what I'm seeing right now is women seem to become more masculinized while losing their femininity, and men seem to become more feminized while losing their masculinity. So in progressing to the future, we need to understand what these sacred energies are doing to us, but also not lose the original energies that we were born with. Yes, when you incorporate the energy of the sacred masculine or the sacred feminine from the opposite sex, there are a lot of wonderful things that can happen. It leads to shadow integration, it leads to a more balanced psyche, it leads to generally an overall harmonious individual. But right now, what I see happening is we're losing a lot of our original, I should say, probably gender roles, and our society wasn't necessarily structured for that. I should say this is one of the reasons why we're finding a lot of men who have basically left the workforce, while a lot of women have entered the workforce. And all of it is creating a situation to where the nuclear family is essentially falling apart. So unless we look for ways to kind of restructure our family, or restructure how we even view family, we are essentially going to be raising a generation of children that have no direction. And right now, this imbalance is causing a huge disruption in our entire society. I believe that over time, if we can learn to recognize what is happening to all of us on an energetic level, perhaps we can learn to incorporate the lessons that Spirit is trying to teach us. I think a lot of this is driven by economics and the hard times that we're living in right now, which is causing this sort of over-feminization or this over-masculinization. I hope, however, in the future that as things start to balance out a little bit more, maybe men and women can rediscover who they are, who their primary roles are, and what the core of their masculinity or what their femininity really is, while incorporating the masculinity or femininity of the opposite sex. So the balance of masculine and feminine energies has to be maintained, because without that balance, we would essentially implode on ourselves, or we would basically expand into nothingness. And as humans, we need to find that balance too within our society, because right now, things aren't quite working as the way that they need to be working. I mean, the Hopis would say that if we as humans can't figure it out for ourselves, then the earth will figure it out for us. However, only time will tell for that answer, and I'm curious to hear what all of you would have to say about this. Have we gone overboard to one extreme or another? Is there a way in which we can responsibly incorporate our sacred masculine and our sacred feminine and still be the people that we need to be for one another? So let me know in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking, and let's get the discussion going. That's about all I have to say for now on this subject. I will definitely touch up again on this in the future, and I am open to whatever suggestions you would like to talk about regarding radiance and void. So love and light, and wisdom and shadow, and now we shall close with the chant of Oblyron. Amde sote, amde Oblyron, amde sote, amde Oblyron.